Okay, I'm going to try to use my phone to go live and see how this goes. And hopefully I can sustain the connection this time. Hello, hello, hello. I'm happy to be here with you. And I received some really just beautiful, beautiful questions when I shared that I would be going live today. So I want to touch back in on those and at least begin. So please feel free to add your questions in the comments as I go, either in response to what I'm saying or any of those pieces. Like add your comments, add your questions, and I'll see where I can go with that as well. So let's see. Maybe I'll go straight to the punchline. So Eleanor said, I'd love to hear strategies for dealing with men on dates who habitually interrupt or change the subject. And there's a lot of ways that you could approach that, and it really depends on what you want out of the interaction ultimately. There are people, certainly men, some women, but there are people who have habits that they're totally unaware of but interested in knowing about. And then there are people who aren't interested. They wouldn't actually want to know or wouldn't be interested necessarily to change their behavior if you let them know. And so there's just playing with those different pieces. And then there's whether you want to be in that role. There's a lot of different ways to play that role of like the one who shares your experience. I'm just going to give my suggestion here. So there's a lot of different ways you can go about that, but the one that I think is the most, probably the most fun all around is to let go of any idea that they'll ever change. And because if they don't, you're never going to see them again. And if you let go of that, the more like, then if they do, and you do see them, it's just going to feel better. Like, oh, this person may never change, but here I am with them for another 30 minutes, another hour or something like, so what's the most enjoyable way I can be with this person? And this, I would say I'm just going to extrapolate into, I find that this is true about most situations. So this is a particular question about dealing with men it's coming from a woman, so she's talking about men on dates who interrupt or change the subject. You could apply this probably to women. You can apply it just to people. I would get curious. That's the most enjoyable way I know how to be with people, whether I like them or not. So certainly you're going to make your choices about how much time you spend with people based on their chronic behavior. But when you first meet somebody, you have no idea, right? Are they really nervous? Like I'll just say, like, I have a tendency when I feel nervous, sometimes I talk a lot. Or I can also, if I'm in a situation where I feel nervous, I can sometimes get a little bit like a know-it-all. And it's a childhood strategy that at some point I thought would win me love. Like if I had all the answers and I was the smartest one in the room, I thought people would love me more. So you never know where people are coming from, right? Like they might be really nervous, and then the way that they display that is by interrupting or changing the subject or acting like a know-it-all, or there's a whole wide variety of ways that people get when they're nervous. So if you have the capacity, and this is the beautiful thing about, we don't always have the capacity, but making the choice like, okay, I'm going to be the one who brings, it could be depth, or it could be humor, it could be curiosity. Whatever the specific is, there's sort of this way of saying, I'm going to be the one who brings how I would like this interaction to be? And if you have the capacity to ask the question, the likelihood is you are the one who has the capacity to do that. You have enough awareness, you have enough, whether it's self-awareness or relational practice, like you have enough capacity to be the one who begins to bring what it is that you're wanting to have in that interaction. And that starts at the energetic level. So, you could tell somebody, you could be like, so, like, have you noticed that you've interrupted me 3 times? Which is likely to bring out a certain level of defensiveness. Like, that's the kind of thing that you can share with somebody when you have some connection, some trust, and you can say, hey, we like each other. I like it. See, there's enough trust here, and I've noticed this thing. Do you want to hear it? But when you're on an initial date, like, that's not really there. And so the likelihood that that's going to bring out the best in that person is really low. And so there can be that, sometimes the curiosity is again, starting at the energetic level. Is there any way that I'm nervous? Or that I'm starting to relate in a habitual way out of nervousness or fear or discomfort? Can I actually slow myself down? Can I slow my breathing down? Can I get in touch with my breath? The fact is, that's just going to change the dynamic no matter what you say. And from there is a place to get curious. Oh, it seems like you really want to talk about this. Were you not interested in what I was saying? Did you think I was done? Sometimes humor can come into that. Once I've slowed down and sort of energetically, it's like humor. It's like, oh, wow. I can't even think of a joke in this moment, but like a humor can arise when you've slowed down enough to just soften and be like, this person may never change. I may never see them again. And how can I bring the kind of relating to this moment that I'm wanting and not wait for them to bring it? Might circle back around to this, but I also want to touch on some of the other pieces that people brought and see how they relate. So Rachel said, I'd love to hear you talk about the murky period of building range, the things that one might expect to feel as they extend themselves, and some good ways to deal with that. So, just to backtrack a little bit, I'm pretty sure what Rachel's talking about is something I've spoken about before, which is this is our capacity to, especially, it's really range in all aspects, but the way that I've talked about it a lot in the past is in terms of the masculine and the feminine within each of us. And that having really nothing to do with what we might think of as like, you're behaving feminine, or that's like a masculine behavior, or is that good, or is that bad? But if we take it at its very basic level, the masculine inside of us, or the ways that we can display that, are very simplistically would be the masculine is the part of you that has never changed. The part of you that is the age you are now, that you know that you're the same, even though you've changed. It's like, yeah, that was actually still Kendra. I'm not like a whole other person a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, even when I was born. Even though scientifically at this point we know that probably all your cells have changed if you're older than 7 years old watching this video between the time you were born and now. And yet you are you. And I was not a different person. I was a Kendra when I was born. I was Kendra when I was 3 and 5 and 10 and 17. And that there's something that carries that through. And that's part of what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the masculine. Our capacity in terms of bringing that, it has to do also with holding its stillness and structure. The feminine, again, I'm going pretty simplistically here for the sake of time, but the feminine is everything else. So it's all the energy. It's that life exists at all, and it's lifing. It's that everything changes. So the masculine is that part that's everything's the same. The feminine is everything changes all the time, and it's all of it all at once. And we're not one or the other. Most of us have tendencies, and we have center of gravities that are more or less true, I would say, to us, in the sense that actually, I'm going to backtrack on that because I'm not even totally sure that's true, but that we have capacities within that, and some of them come more easily to us, and some of them we can, and all of them we can expand intentionally. So I think what Rachel's talking about here is like this piece too, that a lot of times when I hear people want to expand the masculine and the feminine inside them, that what often ends up happening, whether it's intentional or not intentional, is that there's some idea I should be all of it all at once. My feminine and my masculine should be balanced at all time, and that's a whole human being, and I don't believe that. I believe that true flexibility in this area and to really have true range means that we have expanded really, really like deeply and far and fully, and maybe even past what is normal or natural or what we would want to do on a regular basis, into the masculine and into the feminine inside ourselves. And that way we end up having the capacity to draw on that in any moment and bring what's really most needed. And so it's interesting, this might backtrack to the first question about dating. And for most of us, this is really uncomfortable. Even if we think like, oh, I'm a masculine being, and so I'm really comfortable in the masculine. I believe that our culture, I can really only speak, to some extent for Western culture or the United States, although it seems somewhat worldwide to me in terms of at least what I see from the world, but certainly in this kind of a Western United States culture, that both the masculine and the feminine, I don't even want to say extremes, but like pure, in kind of a certain purity, are scary. I do believe that we're, well, actually, I'm not going to go there. So I think that actually it's actually scary, and that the culture at large is like, let's all just hang out here in the middle and be a little bit chronically unhappy, but safe. And that going into these poles on either side actually threatens the status quo. And you'll feel it in the people around you. It's not always depending on the level of practice that a person has or the skill that they have, or even if it's not in this realm, simply the amount of time that a person has spent getting comfortable feeling uncomfortable. If that makes sense, getting comfortable feeling uncomfortable, that will inherently allow them to welcome more of you. And so it'll be less uncomfortable or less unsettling to people who have practice either in this realm or simply practice in being comfortable feeling uncomfortable. But you will feel around people that they may get uncomfortable. They may subtly or not subtly ask you to change. They may say you're too much. Really on both sides. I know that women often express this, like, oh, I hear that I'm too much. And even a woman, a client of mine said recently, she was like, even when I'm totally feminine, I intimidate men. And I was like, girlfriend, like, the feminine is fucking intimidating. This is not, like, you dropping into your feminine isn't like, oh, you're gonna be really nice and accommodating. Like, when you really go into the wide range of the feminine, it's like, it's just all of it. Of course that's gonna be intimidating. That doesn't mean it's bad. It's not bad for people to be a little unsettled around you. And as you develop, you can also develop capacity to sort of get like what can this person handle? And how can I invite them a little farther, maybe than what they could handle just a moment ago, but without blowing past all their, like, they're just like, holy shit. So you can get more nuanced in your expression in terms of where the people that you're around are at. But to touch back in on this, so in this murky period of building range, the first thing I want to say is it's going to be uncomfortable for you as you do this. So for instance, since you're asking the question, Rachel, you're a woman, and because I know you're you're a pretty feminine woman, and it still takes an effort to actually relax your masculine if you want to really expand into that range. And it is scary. It's going to be scary for you. It might be unsettling for other people, or you'll start to notice that around them. But there can be this sense like, will I ever get that back? Like, if I relax my masculine, if I relax the directionality, if I relax the part that's holding the structure, will I just spiral out into complete chaos? Will I be able to pick this back up? And so it takes trust. It takes trust that actually you have that capacity. And sometimes it takes the inviting or the asking someone else to hold structure so that they can actually invite you back also, and you don't have to be doing both. But the willingness to actually trust yourself, I would say, that's one of the things that it takes, because when you start reaching past what's been your comfort zone, you're also having to relax this other part. Whether it's relaxing the feminine so that you can really animate your masculine, or it's relaxing the masculine so that you can really animate your feminine. That, again, culturally, that's not something, even though there are places where it's talked about as valuable, in the actual practice of it, first, we're given very, very few opportunities to practice it. And second, it is often not praised. So one piece of that is that you can also invite people to praise those parts of you. If there's people that you are close enough to and trust enough, you can even let them know, hey, this is a practice I'm taking on. And in moments it might be like, right now I'm really practicing with letting go of the ever-changing, emotional fluidity, the feminine piece of me, and I'm practicing for this little chunk of time, holding the structure and the stillness and the sameness, and then even getting praised on that, so that there is some place that you're rewiring those parts that find that scary. I had a conversation with a woman about a week ago, and I shared this little piece of really my belief that around this, that for both men and women, there's this real value in expanding our range in both poles, and then finding the art and the play. But not so much about the balancing. And I can't remember exactly what I said, but something I said, she just sighed, and there was this relief. And she said, like, oh, I hadn't even realized that there was it was like, she said, it wasn't even that she was judging her masculine or thinking she shouldn't be that way, but she was bringing it forward in a very defensive way. Like, this is okay. It's okay that I'm strong in this way. And that's one of the ways that we don't allow ourselves to simply bring either the healthy masculine or the healthy feminine, is because we're afraid someone's going to say that's not okay. And so when we first make the space inside ourselves and then include people and even share, like, this is tender, and I'm like, can you appreciate this part of me? So in appreciating that, when I was talking to her, it let her relax and really feel like, oh, that I have these strong masculine capacities is okay. And I can relate to that. I had a teacher named Sophia Diaz, extraordinary, extraordinary teacher. And she teaches a lot in the realm of embodiment and also in the realm of the masculine and the feminine. And I had been practicing with her for several years at this point. And then I ended up at a workshop with her that was co-ed. A lot of times I did only women's practice with her. But then I went to a practice that was co-ed, and she asked the room to divide up into masculine and feminine essence. So she didn't ask us to divide into men and women. She was saying, at your essence, like, do you have a feminine essence or a masculine essence? And I broke down in tears. And I was like, I don't know. Like, Sophia, do I belong on this side or do I belong on this side? And she took my arm. Then everyone was standing sort of on sides of the room, and she sort of dragged me up to the front of the room. And she pointed on me and she said, only someone with a very feminine essence would still be confused after all this time about whether they have a masculine or a feminine essence. And I was still crying, and I started laughing, and there was this relief, and I thought, like, oh, I'm okay. And to me, there was two pieces to that. And one was like, partly, and this touches on I think Allison's question about accepting my feminine side. So part of it had to do with putting myself in the space of a teacher that I trusted so deeply, and her saying that allowed me to relax a little bit into like, oh, I have a feminine essence. But it gave me this permission that was around like, oh, I have this masculine capacity, but I had been sort of defensive about it. I was like, maybe I just have a masculine essence because, I intimidate men, or this piece. So let's see, I got a little lost here. I want to circle back around. So things that you might expect to feel. I mean, I would say at its bare, like at the bare bones, is just uncomfortable and awkward. And some sense of like, am I doing this right? Is this even me? So is this even me? I really do want to touch on this piece is, first of all, we don't know. You're not going to know what's true for you until you allow yourself to explore your range. Because of the culture we grew up in, because of our karma, because of the family we were raised in, we've all found, our little way of being that has basically worked in the world and worked in our family and got us enough of what we need. And I, frankly, it's so funny because I built an entire company and a life on this idea of authenticity and authentic relating. And frankly, I think the idea of authenticity as like a fixed point, I don't believe that that's true. And I don't believe that we can actually trust only ourselves to know, because we're too close to ourselves. And so it takes, I put myself in the space of teachers who I could tell were deeper than me, who had more range than I did, who I felt magnetized towards, like, I want something that they have. I'm not them. I don't want to be them. But they have an expression that I want to be able to express inside of. And I've had male teachers and female teachers. And honestly, I questioned for a long time this. I tend to choose teachers who are very fierce. And for a while, that was part of what linked me to, I was like, well, maybe I have this masculine essence of like a challenging, like I want to be challenged. And there's sort of this idea that, the masculine wants to be challenged and the feminine wants to be praised. And there's a way that I think that's true, but it gets mapped over to men and women, and it's just, ends up kind of being bullshit. So it's like, let it go for a little bit. But what I realized at some point is that it actually is because my essence is so feminine that I have chosen both male and female teachers who are so fierce, and they will say, like, do this. Because left to my own devices, I have a lot of ideas about what I should do, and some of them are very healthy and some of them are not. And also it allows me to relax that part of me that's guiding my own life all the time. When I put myself in the space of someone who will take that role very strongly, who will say, you should do this. And I'm like, oh, thank you for telling me. So again, circling back around, the questioning, is this me? Is this authentic? Is that I would let go of that question for a while and I would just explore. So that's something that I would expect you to feel, and a way to deal with it is to, sometimes time limits work really well for that. So it's like, I'm going to explore this for 1 month, 3 months, such and such. I'm going to include these people. I'm going to let them in on my practice so that I can ask them, hey, what do you think? And they've got to be people you trust enough and that will also give you honest feedback, so that they're not just being nice to you, like, oh, you're fine, whatever you do. Of course you're fine, whatever you do. That's not the point. You're going to be fine whether you expand your range or not. And there's so much more available there if you do. Like the range of experiences you can have and the range of relating that you can have, and just finding all that fullness inside yourself. A lot of emotion can come up when we begin to expand. Sometimes it can be a lot of grief. There's parts of ourselves that we've disowned, consciously or unconsciously, and so it would be really, really normal to feel grief. And I wouldn't worry too much about trying to figure out what the grief's about, or even figuring out what part did I disown. That'll happen, but I wouldn't get too fixated on it. So grief, anger can come up for a lot of reasons, but one is that most of us suppress our anger in some way, shape, or form. And so when we begin to actually open our bodies and open the channels for expressing, most of us have anger that's going to come out. And again, I wouldn't get too worried about like, what is this about? And do I need to figure it out? Some of this just needs to get cleared. And that, I guarantee it'll happen. I have many, many times over the last 15 years worked with people who at some point say like, but what if I feel like this forever? Like if I go into the sadness, what if I never come out? Or if I go into the rage, what if I never stop feeling that way? And I can almost guarantee that you will. If you actually continue to work to open the channels in your body and work on expressing, it won't last forever. Emotion itself is feminine, and that's part of what lets you know it won't last forever, because it's always changing. So let me see. I saw there was a question here, and I want to see if it relates to this. Kevin says, I feel like I have a feminine essence. How do I know if that's not just wishful thinking? It sounds like you would like to have a feminine essence. I never had a good reason to feel like masculinity will be accepted, so I have a lot of incentive to appear. Oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And thank you for sharing that. So let's see, I want to speak a little bit about this, and then I'll close for today. And there's so many good questions. Anyway, I'll do this again soon. So what I would say to you, Kevin, is for now, this would be my encouragement and my invitation. And it's totally up to you where you want to go with this. But I would suggest not actually worrying about whether you have a masculine or a feminine essence. Let that part go. And give yourself some place where you can practice your range. So one way that I'll say about this is like, so I have a feminine essence, but I have a lot of masculine capacity. So just because that is true for me doesn't mean that I haven't done a lot of work that has expanded my range in the masculine. So you, Kevin, and anybody who resonates with this, man or woman, There may be ways that you can still expand your feminine range. You can expand your feeling body. You can expand like the gift of your expression. And there's a lot of ways to do that. Maybe my next live will really dive into some specifics about developing range. But I would encourage you, not because you're a man or because you have a masculine essence or there's anything better about the masculine side of you, but simply to give yourself space to experience range. I would invite you to begin to bring in masculine practices into your life so that you can develop that range. Some very simple masculine practices, and again, men and like sometimes I do stillness meditation. That is a masculine practice. So stillness and silence, and allowing that to be part of your regular routine, if you will, of your day or of your week, that will build a certain masculine capacity. And you'll touch on parts of yourself that if you haven't done work like that in the past will start to arise. So everything I was saying to Rachel is true in that too, which is you never know what's going to come up when you start touching on parts that have been denied. So stillness meditation practice is one really beautiful and simple masculine practice. Another one is, this one's a little bit trickier to go into when I don't have, like, there's not a lot of interaction here on Facebook Live, so, but is around widening your energetic capacity to hold. So it's not it is the physical capacity to hold too, but there's an energetic capacity we have to actually expand out whilst, like, I'm still here, but I'm also out here. And to be able to wrap your awareness around the space or around the people. To be the one in interactions or in spaces who is more still, who is more present in a focused way, and whose energy is widening around whoever else is there in the space that you're in. Those are masculine practices. So I know that's not a lot necessarily to go on, Kevin, but the specific piece I really wanted to say is my encouragement, my invitation would be to let go of anything about whether you have a masculine or a feminine essence. Kind of matters, doesn't matter. But that there's something beautiful about range. And when I hear what sounds like you saying that in your life, maybe in your family, in where you grew up, perhaps you had very toxic models of masculinity, or what that was shown to be was something that wasn't appealing to you. It could, many people are only ever offered the reflection of something where the masculine is either violent or hurtful or absent. Those are common experiences. So if that's your experience, we can fairly safely say that that your response to that is probably some unconscious reaction, because that's what we all do as children. And so there's a real beauty and an opportunity you have as an adult to begin to expand into what is the healthy version of that, for no other reason than to give yourself more range. So I only got to a few questions, but I love the engagement. I loved the questions. I will do this again soon, and you can continue to bring questions either to my Facebook wall, to the video here, or the post, leave the comments. You can send me a private message, and you can find more about me at kendrakunov.com. I hope you have a great day, and thanks for joining. Ciao.